Hello and welcome to Race to 2020, a very special Super Tuesday edition, or as we call it here in Australia, Wacky Wednesday. I'm James Morrow here, as always, with my good friend Jack Houghton, and we're here to tell you all about what's happening and still playing out with these crazy Super Tuesday results. Jack, how do you make the results?
Well, I don't think it's as big a blowout as everybody's saying, but Joe Biden has definitely pulled ahead. I think we were saying this is a fellow who's dead in the water. He looks senile. He has made a significant recovery off the back of South Carolina. Great for him, but not so great for the Sanders camp.
Okay, so I'm going to disagree with you on this here. All right, now I think that
Already?
Joe Biden, who had a good night. There were 14 states. Let's give everybody a bit of background here. We're talking about Super Tuesday. That's 14 of the states all having their primaries, caucuses tonight or overnight, or their time in the United States. Big day, but 1/3 of the delegates that are required to win the Democratic nomination, all at stake here. Now, of these, Joe Biden won 10 states. This is really huge because Joe Biden has run for president not one, not two, but 3 times. In all of those times, he had not won a single state primary until last week. Suddenly, he's just won 10 more states. So everyone's suddenly saying, oh, Joe Biden's back, baby. Well, he was never there because, people had taken a look at him and said, we don't want that. And then they looked at the entire rest of the field of Democratic candidates and they said, well, maybe we just might have to have this guy. But 2 interesting things about that. Number one, Mike Bloomberg, who was going to come in on the scene with his hundreds of millions of dollars. Now, he spent $500 million US, about $750 million. That's $750 million of his own fortune to get to this point in the presidential race. He won not one state. He picked up barely any delegates. I think he did well in American Samoa, which is where he had a total of 7 full-time staffers, which shows you just how much he was pumping up money into this whole thing. It was like the Clive Palmer of this.
He's still worth about 60-odd billion. So when you talk about how much money he's pumping in, it's the equivalent of, the deficit to my net wealth if I buy a cup of coffee.
Yeah, exactly.
So he that's why he was so dangerous, but it hasn't paid off.
Well, but I think it's a really interesting thing because it shows to me, this is one of the good news messages out of tonight is that you cannot buy an election. And I'll tell you what, to me, it's nuts because they said, oh, Trump, the Russians bought the election for Trump with like a $100,000 Facebook ad buy, and here's Mike Bloomberg with a $700 million ad buy.
Proving he can't buy it.
And it's like, and no one wanted him. He didn't even, like big states like Virginia where you would have thought he would have done well, he didn't even get to the 15% delegate threshold, which is what you need to even stay in the race and get delegates. So
a few weeks ago, Don tweeted out. He tweeted out, he's like, see, it's not as easy as I made it out to be. You need something more than just money to win the presidency.
Why do you make him sound like Prince?
I would love to see him sing some Prince.
Oh, I think that'd be. Look, he might do it. Donald, if you're listening, sing us a bit of Prince next time.
But he makes a good point. It's not just money. You need to have a bit of charisma.
You have to have charisma. You have to program. You have to plan, and you have to have something besides just the desire to be president, which I guess he has for whatever weird sort of reason.
My reading of Bloomberg is that the reason that Bloomberg was gaining popularity is because Joe Biden was appearing to be a no-show. And then all the Democrats, they're looking for someone who's
you had Bernie, who was like just romping it in, Iowa and across the other states.
Exactly. Yeah. And then so the issue is that you need an alternative to Bernie Sanders if you have any hopes of
for the moderate centrists.
Yes. Yeah. Or for having a candidate who's even moderately electable. Yeah. Because Donald Trump will slaughter Bernie Sanders.
You say that. He
will.
Well, see, you say that, but this is what people said about Donald Trump. I think that right now it's probably looking more like it's a 2/3. Just 1 second, Jack. Allow me, Jack. Thank you. About a 2/3, 1/3 chance that Biden is the nominee. And I think Sanders is stronger than people think, and I'll explain why in a minute. But Sanders believes in something, and he has a much greater enthusiasm pull with his team and his supporters than I think Joe Biden, who has a lot of people who are just there to kind of show up. And also that's exactly what we saw in 2016.
What are radical about Trump's policies?
Trump's policies were very radical. If you go back at the time,
not for a Republican.
Yes, they were.
Which ones?
Protectionism.
Yeah.
Foreign policy.
Yeah.
All the way down the line, he was a rebuke.
They're just classic libertarian policies.
How is protectionism?
Government.
How is protectionism a libertarian policy?
Well, it's essentially it's smaller government. It's kick globalism to the curb. Leave me the hell alone and let me do my business.
Trump was a rebuke to the moderate Mitt Romney centrism of the Republican Party. Bernie Sanders is a rebuke to that kind of Biden moderate centrism of the Democrat Party.
Sure, but scale the extremism of the policies. Bernie Sanders' policies are so radical.
Sure.
I just don't think you can say, well, Trump managed to trick everybody because he was an outsider. A radical conservative policy is very different to a radical socialist policy.
Sure. But what I'm saying is that the appetite is there, and you could wind up having that sort of thing happen.
When it is man v man, I agree. I do agree.
And I think that there is an appetite out there. I think for that sort of contest where you have the differences starkly highlighted, where you have both sides really clearly delineated, versus, you're going to have Trump on the one side, very much, delineated to what he is and what he's all about. But then you've got, if you have this sort of moderate, sort of squishy guy who's, all about, well, we're going to just give away a bunch of free stuff, which is kind of Biden's sort of thing, free early child care and a bunch of this and a bunch of that. And then he said a lot of stuff in his speech tonight about, healing the nation and stuff. But you've got to that's all sort of boilerplate. You've got to sort of wonder exactly to whom is he talking there. I mean, who thinks the nation is broken? If that's a bunch of never-Trumpers, sure, that's fine. But that's not going to be enough to positively get people to go and vote over the line for him.
And we do actually have a grab of Bernie Sanders talking about his broader strategy.
Yeah, let's have a play. Let's have a listen to Bernie. Let's have a listen to Bernie, and then we're going to talk about the delegate counts because that's really important. So let's have a listen to this Bernie grab.
You cannot beat Trump with the same old kind of politics. What we need is a new politics that brings working class people into our political movement.
So, walk us through what he was just saying there.
Well, essentially, he's saying that he can take on the establishment. He has the power to beat Donald Trump. Essentially, what you were saying. He was saying that an outsider can do
outsider
it.
Thing.
I disagree with him empirically.
Oh, completely.
But he has, I think, hoodwinked a fair few Democrats, and probably more Democrats have hopped behind Bernie Sanders than the media reports will suggest.
Okay, so now we've got Bernie with 5 states. We've got him with California, Colorado, Texas, Utah, Vermont. So California and Texas. That is huge, okay? That, I think, is
Vermont,
really
incredibly expected. Texas, wow.
Yeah, California expected because, of course, that's radical commie anyway. Well, it is. I mean, it is. It is just, it's red California now. It used to be, the industrial engine of America, and now it is just, like tech billionaires stepping over homeless people who are defecating in the streets. It's a horror show. And now then you've got Joe Biden, Alabama, Arkansas, Massachusetts, which I think is a bit of a surprise. I think Massachusetts probably would have gone to Bernie. Maine, I think that should have gone to Bernie. Minnesota, very liberal state. I thought that should have gone to Bernie. North Carolina, no surprise. Oklahoma, no surprise. Tennessee, Virginia, no surprise there. But the Texas, I think, is really interesting. That could reflect a number of things. That could reflect the big sort of growth of, that sort of purple demographic, the sort of the Americans who've moved from Democrat states to Republican states and changed the demographic. But let's go to the delegate count. Okay,
because it's important because this is all great, but
it all comes down to the delegate.
Must be considered in their totality.
It must be
so
considered.
What's the total
okay,
count?
So now you need 1,991 delegates going. So Biden has got 294. Bernie Sanders has 249. So Biden is, ahead.
Sorry, is that from today, or is this in total?
That's all told.
This is
all
total.
That's all told, all up. But where they were before, they were in low double digits, both of them, because the states that we were talking about before, Iowa, New Hampshire, symbolically important, but not actually a lot of meat on those bones. Then, Buttigieg with 26, he's out. Warren with 16. Now, here's the interesting thing. I think this is also, I want to talk about this for a second, too. The really interesting thing, too, now, Warren had a horrible night. Warren is done for. She is toast. I suspect that the only reason why she is staying in, and I mean, she lost her home state of Massachusetts.
She came third as well. She wasn't even
third.
runner-up.
I mean, what a for her. And I got to say, I got this a bit wrong. I thought that she might have done better being a female candidate. There could have been a bit of Hillary 2.0 without the baggage thing. And we talked about this months ago. But, boy, she fizzled. And it's really, really interesting.
She's Bernie Sanders light.
She's Bernie Sanders light. She was a media darling for a long time. And it's funny. They tried to pump her up so much, the mainstream media in the U.S.
They've got a
that
toxic
didn't
touch,
work.
don't
I
they?
think so.
Anyone that
and this
the,
is why
the
I think
media
Biden's probably
behind.
got trouble here. But so she came in third. But the interesting thing that if you start to look at the vote tallies, the number of people who voted in a lot of these states where Biden won came in first, and then you've got your Sanders and then your Warren down below. If you add up those figures for Sanders and Warren, who is also a fellow progressive, a lot of times those numbers are going to be greater than what Biden pulled. And so what that means is, I think, sorry, Jack, everybody is saying, oh, Biden's got this. Everybody says Biden's got this. It's all been a script played out by the Democratic Party.
I want to see Sanders versus Trump. I want to see it.
Well, I'm just saying, what I'm saying is what I'm going to say we're going to see, we'll see Biden at the nomination, but we're also going to see a civil war within the Democrat Party.
Oh, for
the
sure.
number of
No matter what
progressive
happens,
votes
yeah.
that we have here suggests to me that they haven't put the progressive socialist left-wing genie back in its bottle. And if Sanders hadn't gotten blown up last week by his stupid, immoral, offensive, horrible comments about how Cuba was so good because, Jack, it's the literacy programs they have in Cuba, despite the communism.
Why does your Bernie sound like Prince?
What? It's this whole thing with Cuba and the literacy, I think that blew up with a lot of people and probably scared a fair few middle-of-the-roaders.
So can I just step in? Look,
please,
as I was saying a little bit earlier, I see it completely playing out the complete opposite.
Yeah,
this is what
and
I
you
see.
may be right,
and one of us will be.
For once.
One of us will be. So at least at home we could say that this podcast we're guaranteed to be right.
Yeah.
The way I see it is, I was kind of alluding it before, is the Bloomberg factor. I think the moderate vote was being cannibalized because people were afraid to jump behind Biden because he looked like a candidate that was never going to get over the line. So then they were looking at alternatives. So then you've got this fractured vote. You have Yang, then you have Steyer, and then you have Bloomberg. Bloomberg, I think...
Well, Yang was never going to go anywhere. He was a nice goofball. Steyer was never going to go anywhere.
I'm just talking about the fractured moderate vote.
Yeah.
Yang was the only fellow who didn't jump behind the impeachment train and just jump on that entire hoax.
Yeah.
He was the only person...
Hey, breaking news, by the way. I am told by sources back home that Andrew Yang is considering a run for mayor of New York City, which would be amazing.
Good.
Because I think that would be...
I think he's quite a sensible person.
Get him into the political arena that way.
But let me go through this.
Please.
So what you're having, essentially, is the moment that Biden won Carolina, he looked like a legitimate candidate. And then you see, intrinsically, at the exact same time, Bloomberg's votes go away because they're saying, OK, we can rally behind this guy. And I think the moderates and I think the party will rally behind him, as Pete Buttigieg is doing, and as Klobuchar is doing.
You got to wonder.
They have to.
You got to wonder what was promised to Klobuchar and Pete Buttigieg to get them out. I mean, that's pretty interesting there.
We can wonder. I mean, I don't think it takes a political genius to know that Buttigieg's future is tied to Biden.
Yeah.
But
my point though is that Biden is such an intrinsically weak candidate. I mean, if he had only, after all these presidential runs, won his first state last week, then North Carolina finally makes him seem legitimate. That is amazing because think about it. Now, this is a guy, and in fact, actually, he's really, really gaffe prone. Let's have a little bit of that right now here. Let's just listen to what he said today.
By the way, this is my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, this is Valerie. You switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me, folks. It's still early, but things are looking awful good. For those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign.
So this is just the latest in a long string of gaffes.
He doesn't even know the name of the woman he's married to.
Joe Biden, they're confusing his wife and his sister, which frankly kind of makes what Hunter got up to look almost tame. But the thing is, this is a guy who, in recent weeks, he has had so many gaffes that he's got a gaffe a day. The other day, he said that he was running for the U.S. Senate. He said that it was Super Thursday. He said that 150 million Americans, i.e. half the country, had been killed in gun violence. He said, if you don't like me, vote for the other Biden. This is just a couple of things over a couple of days. The thing
that last one's great.
Ever and ever and ever with this guy, and he is, and so you have an awful lot of people questioning, literally, whether he's got the mental acuity to do this. Jack, he's already floating it with people that if he wins, he will only serve one term. So it immediately makes him a lame duck president. I mean, that to me shows just how weak the Democrats are.
Well, it also is a way of shoring up support for people that say, well, in one term we can replace him, but at least we deal with Donald Trump now. And I guess what it comes down to you is it's kind of like it's like a what's that test, like a Rorschach test?
Rorschach test. Yeah,
Rorschach test. He is the ultimate one of these, because what I look at when I see Joe Biden is I see a race that can be won on policy by being centrist. And I think what you're looking at on the other side of it is maybe the personal politicking of it, because American elections have turned into a popularity contest and personalities are at play.
Look,
but I think their best chance is a fella who is not going to suggest a 44.
A fella.
Who's
are you running for president just to jack out stump speech? Oh, you fellas out there!
I'm fully on the Joe Biden bandwagon. I'm going to be talking about corn pop.
You get the corn pop.
But a guy who's not, all he has to do to be a threat to Donald Trump is say, yeah, I'm not going to spend $44 trillion taking away your right to private health insurance and creating a state-owned one.
Well, that's.
And then he's immediately head and shoulders away in front of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah, but then what he's doing there is he's not running against Donald Trump. He's running against Bernie Sanders. That's not a winning proposition.
It is if he can defeat Bernie Sanders, and then it becomes a question of morality and personality.
It shouldn't have to even be a contest, though, between, like, how is it, the crazy thing is that Bernie, and then here's the other question then. You remember America not compulsory voting, So I've been looking at some polls today, something like 53% of Bernie voters have said they would vote for the nominee, whomever that nominee is. Something like 97% of Biden supporters would vote for the nominee, whomever the nominee is. So they put up Biden. That's they're going to lose.
It happened to Hillary, didn't it?
It happened to Hillary. It's the same thing. So they're kind of held hostage to this radical left flank whose votes that they desperately need.
Can I ask you a question about AOC and how you think this ideological divide may more long-term affect the Democratic Party, now that we know that that Cortez is actually doing things like setting up her own super PAC. She's financing candidates to take on established Democrat candidates. If they do go down the path and elect Biden, as I think they will, and it is a Biden v. Trump election, if Joe Biden does manage to pull off what we suspect might not be possible, even if he does, what does the future of the Democratic Party look like, and how aggrieved are the more ideological radical leftists going to be?
Look, you could totally see a situation where, over another term of a Trump administration, where a new sort of independent Democratic Party forms, into which the AOCs and the Bernies and all of those people and their rump of hard left supporters go. That leaves the centrist, moderate Democratic left as its own centrist rump. Now, what that could do is that could wind up peeling off Republicans who don't like Trump, that kind of never Trump vote, and you could wind up almost with a three-party system there, where you have a far-left, moderate, bipartisan
led by Mitt Romney.
And, a sort of a Mitt Romney fusion party, and then, the MAGA
party. So like a formal purple Dems.
You really actually could see that. I actually think that, the Democrat establishment would right now, they would rather... sort of like a John Milton sort of thing. They would rather lose under Bernie than rule under Sanders. They would rather be a rump party that gets its clock cleaned in the next election than go to have Bernie Sanders, because he is as much of a swamp dweller as Trump, and that's why I think that mood is still very much out there in the electorate. The political compact, Jack, is really being rewritten right now in America. Trump started the rewriting process, but it's not done yet. Parties aren't forever. The bipartisan structure of American politics, that's lasted for a long time.
Entropy gets us all.
But entropy gets us all, and eventually things will break up and form in new ways that we haven't seen yet. And I think, you can say, oh, well, it's the Russians, oh, it's this, oh, it's that. Okay, fine, but
what do they even stand for anymore? You had a party that was, the foundation is really, it's the party for the workers.
Yeah, and now the Democrats have become sort of, so look, if you want to get sort of sociological, you could almost say that there's kind of a split in the middle classes here, and it's between kind of the yeomanry and the clerisy. And the clerisy are the sorts of people who are, thought workers, creatives, lawyers, teachers, doctors, that professional classes. The yeomanry are the sort of the working classes who do the sort of physical labor and things like that. There's some crossover, but the Democrats have weighted themselves entirely in favor of that clerisy rather than people who actually do productive things, and they've felt more and more and more like they've been left behind as the people in the other half sell their jobs overseas because, oh, climate change, or oh, globalization, or oh, the market tells us that, sorry, Jack, your job's not efficient anymore, and I can have it done in Manila or Mexico or wherever, so sorry, buddy, learn to code, And they say, no. And then a guy named Trump comes along, and he says, hey, Jack, these guys over here, they don't like you. I like you. I'm going to get you your job back, and then you come and you vote for me. So that's another alignment, I think. So the Democrats have, essentially, the Democrats have to stop holding their nose at regular Americans.
Yeah, I think that the Trump campaign is quite early capitalizing on that. I think the other day he mentioned that we're going to fight for the farmers. And his rhetoric is already about the working class, and it's almost like you've had an ideological switch.
Very much so, because it's not necessarily a switch. Reagan actually started this because Democrats flocked to Reagan in 1980 when he really captured a lot of Democrat working class Americans who were really offended by the social liberation, social decadence of the Democrats, which had become all about a lot of things that they weren't about. And it was offensive to religious people and traditional values people and things like that. And Reagan said, no, come on in, Big Tent, come on in. And then Trump really sort of solidified that. There was some drift away from it, during the long sort of years of sort of third wayism under Clinton and and somewhat to some extent Bush. But then Obama again exacerbated that social push to the hard left, and then Trump came in on top of that.
I guess the other thing is Hillary Clinton going to rear her head and have some kind of impact?
Well, look, it's tempting to say that there's some sort of way through. If Biden was to really,
or a vice position,
well,
wouldn't that be incredible?
It would be incredible if you were Joe Biden with her as your vice president. You'd probably stay away from open windows. But the thing is, though, Hillary is always out there. God knows what she's going to do. If for some reason Biden was to seem like suddenly a non-candidate, huge slips, the brain started to seem like he was going, you could get the superdelegates in, you could get a backroom convention. The thing is, too, if neither one of these guys has a plurality to get to that magic 1991 number, you're going into that convention and you're looking potentially at something where if they don't get it on the first ballot, then it's back rooms, it's smoke-filled rooms, and also it's riots on the street.
It'd be quite incredible. What I would like to see, actually, is Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders team up. Maybe Joe Biden takes the lead, and they show, hey, the party can work together. We can have a moderate, and we can have an ideologue.
This is the worst remake of Super Friends ever. Can you imagine these two guys with a combined age of 150 million years old going out there and losing their car keys?
All I know is I wouldn't want to be Corn Pop.
I wouldn't want to be Corn Pop. I also wouldn't want them at the wheel. Anyway, this has been a huge Super Tuesday edition of Race to 2020. Thank you very much. We're looking at these California results. They're pretty amazing. It's all much closer to call, I think, than people are giving it credit for. It's not a Biden walkaway by any stretch of the imagination. Long way to go, folks. Be with us next week. See you Wednesday.